I've got a Jacobsen gang roller here with these cone nuts on the end. I've got my normal setup, left hand bracket. The face of it is at the end of the slot. The right hand bracket with the bottom leg pointing to the right, that's the normal setup for most procedures. Right now I've got the standard 2-inch tapered inserts. If you want to capture one of these with the end nuts on here, you're going to have to use a different insert. You can remove these cone nuts and then capture it with these 2-inch inserts and proceed with the entire procedure. But in order to capture it with these cone nuts, I'm going to have to use a 2.5-inch tapered insert, which is optional, and the part number for one of these is RT146. Now I'll loosen these lock bolts on one or both ends and unscrew these cone nuts. I like to put the shaft that has the flat on it on my left side here. Also, I noticed when they welded the end caps on this roller, they left a bead of the weld kind of sticking out, and that will cause the roller not to fit in this insert very well unless you grind that little knob off. I'm going to make note of how many threads I've got exposed on each end of the shaft. I've got about 3 exposed on each end. Now I've already got these cone nuts loosened, but if they're rusted, one thing you can do is put a longer bolt in here, like so. That will help you unscrew one of these, and you can even lock one end by putting a bolt through one of these holes here on the end bracket, and then you could have another bolt rest up against this one. But I've already gotten these loosened. Take the shaft out, and I'm going to put it on top of the toolbox where I've got a groove cut on each end of the toolbox. This is just a handy place to put the shaft. And now I'll take the seals out. And the bearing cone came out. seal and bearing, and that end comes out. I need to take the bearing cup out. On this particular roller, there was a weird seal on the inside of the bearing cup that was preventing me from expanding the puller collet fully behind that bearing cone. So there's a couple ways to deal with that. One, you could probably expand this collet and force it to expand and kind of push that seal out and back a little bit. What I did was I took a punch and punched that seal in down and back, and rotated this roller and punched it all the way around. That gave me enough clearance behind that cup for the feet of this collet. Got the collet expanded all the way. I'm going to put the puller bridge in. And if you've got one of the earlier models, you'll need to have the standoffs installed in here before you tighten this puller bridge down. On the later models, you can drop the standoffs in after, whenever you're ready to start pulling. So I'll screw the jacking screw in all the way and then turn it back about one turn, and then draw the jacking nut up to the thrust bearing. And got my 15mm wrench out here to hold this jacking screw, and then pull the bearing cup out. After I put this in, or else it'll squeeze the brackets together, so I'm going to have to back off on that. That's a good demonstration of what happens when you forget to put that in. The bearing is out. Now we will fit the roller around. now we can pull this other bearing out the same way. Now to put, then you would take your inner seals out if you have them in there, put new seals in, and then to put the new bearing cups in, you've got two options. You can drive them in with this cup driver right here. I use this handle. I strike the handle with the hammer, and it drives this bearing in. You could also press this bearing in using this same tool without the handle. I've got an old shaft here. You could actually use the shaft that you took out of here. If you do that, you've got a couple. You're going to have to couple it with the jacking screw right here. So if the shaft that you're using has a 3/8 fine thread tapped hole in the end of it, you can use this adapter that screws into the shaft, and that'll allow you to couple it with this jacking screw. What I've done here is I've taken an old shaft. I'm going to screw this installation tool onto this end. Doesn't have to be tight, just needs to be screwed on. Insert the shaft. And I'm using a different adapter. I've cut the end of this old shaft off so I can screw this adapter on here, or a 3/4 fine thread, and that steps it down to a 5/8 fine thread so that I can screw my jacking screw into. And we'll pull the bearing in after we put our standoff back on. We've hit the bottom. The bearing is all the way in. Okay, we'll put the new bearing cones in. tilt this up. Pack the cone and this cavity with grease. Put the cone in, then the seal. I'm going to use the same installation tool. Just flip it around. I'll pop the seal in. The roller and put the other seal in. Actually, I could leave it here and okay, in goes the shaft. Now I'm going to leave this flat end of the shaft on my left side. Okay. Now remember, we counted the number of threads that were exposed when we started. So I'm going to hold the shaft and thread one of these cone nuts in until I've got 3 threads exposed on this end. So I'm done with this end. Push the shaft all the way, and then I'm going to screw this cone nut in until it stops. And you'll probably, or you may want to use, again, a long bolt thread in here. To tighten it up all the way, and then back off just a little bit. And then lock these cone nuts in place with these bolts here. That's it.